Hi, my name is Pamela Fuselli, and I'm the host of Popping the Bubble Wrap. Are you the person in your family who worries about the safety of others, about buying safety products and using them? Are you yelling, "Yes, that's me"? Then this is the podcast for you. Raising a child or children can be a hair-raising undertaking, and keeping them safe is your priority. Parachute's Popping the Bubble Wrap podcast explores what you really need to think about and provides easy tips on prevention strategies. No bubble wrap here, though. This is a bonus episode we're dropping into the Popping the Bubble Wrap podcast feed. Today, we're exploring the concept, importance, and value of play. The Canadian Paediatric Society recently released a position statement on outdoor risky play that recognizes that risky play is essential to children's development and physical, mental, and emotional well-being. I'm talking to lead authors of the Canadian Paediatric Society's statement on risky play, Dr. Suzanne Benno, a pediatric emergency medicine specialist and medical co-director for trauma at the Hospital for Sick Children, and Dr. Émilie Beaulieu, a general pediatrician at CHU de Quebec and an assistant professor at the Department of Pediatrics at Laval University. We're also joined by Dr. Mariana Bressoni, lead of the Outside Play Lab and director of the Human Early Learning Partnership at the University of British Columbia. Welcome, everyone.
Hi, thank you.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Lovely to be here.
So, listeners might think that injury prevention and encouraging risky play don't go together, but they actually do. So, first off, let's talk about risky play. What is it? What isn't it? And I mean, the idea isn't to increase the number of children who get injured or visit the emergency department, right, Mariana?
An excellent question. Risky play is thrilling and exciting forms of play where kids are engaged with uncertainty and there's a chance of physical injury. And so, as you say, it might be counterintuitive that injury prevention professionals are recommending risky play. But what it looks like, and I think if many of us think back to our favorite childhood play memories, we would be engaging in risky play, climbing trees, chasing each other, jumping from heights that we are not used to. Those kinds of things are typical of risky play. And what the research has increasingly shown is just how critical these experiences are to children's health and development and well-being, which has been beautifully highlighted by the Canadian Paediatric Society position statement.
Right. So we're talking about as safe as necessary, not as safe as possible. So we're not talking about kids being exposed to hazards, say. And can you give us an example of what a hazard might be?
Yeah, happy to. And it's not always clear cut because the difference between a risk and a hazard could be, what's risk to one child could be a hazard to another. So what we try and do is, as you said, keep kids as safe as necessary so that we keep the risks intact so that they can make decisions for themselves of what they want to engage. So an example of a risk would be, making a decision around how high they want to climb or how far they want to jump. A hazard would be something that could cause serious injury or even death. And so, to emphasize, these are extremely rare, very rare in play situations. But we would want to be looking for things like, broken equipment or a broken glass or needles or on the playground or things like that, that kids might not be able to manage for themselves so that we can kind of manage it for them, or that we work with them to actually help identify the hazards and be able to manage them. So throughout it, you're also thinking about, building kids' risk management skills so that you're building their confidence to be able to kind of manage these things on their own.
And involving kids is really important in this sort of interaction and play and decisions. It's often the parents who are a little bit more cautious and sort of saying, don't do this, be careful about that. But really taking the cues from your child is important, and understanding their own abilities. And so parents, empowering parents, I think, is what we want to do through this conversation, to say, hey, know your child, but also watch what your child is, or children are giving you cues on what they're comfortable doing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I kind of really emerged for me as a big learning from this work is that, as parents, we often say, be careful, watch out, don't do that. Just it comes out of our mouths before we even think about it. But what we might not realize is the effect on the child that's hearing that, right? So, and what we're saying to them is that we don't trust them, that we're afraid for them, that the world is too scary, and that we don't think that they can manage the risks on their own. And if you think about be careful as an injury prevention message, it's quite useless, because be careful of what? And what didn't I notice? And the child can be distracted and so on. So what we really want parents to do is kind of take a moment between that kind of sense of fear that we have, we want the best for our children, take a moment, pause, and, think about what's the worst that can happen. And can I, think about the competence of my child, empower my child in the situation, and let them figure it out for themselves. And even if we wait a few seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, it can be incredible what we learn in terms of the competence of our children that we can then build on, so that we have this kind of trusting relationship that we can work with them to build their skills and really make sure that they're the ones driving the decisions.
Yeah, I think that's really comforting for parents to know that kind of takes a bit of a load off and realizes that, this is kind of a back and forth, but also something that changes over time and over the aging of their children and their development and things like that. Suzanne and Emily, the recently released position statement was urging members of the society, so physicians like yourselves, pediatricians, to add risky play to their clinical toolbox to help manage some of the challenges and some of the things that they see. Physicians, doctors are really a trusted source of information. So, Suzanne, maybe you can start and tell us a little bit about, why did we need a statement on risky play? Why was it important to develop this statement?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you, Pam. We felt, in discussions with our injury prevention committee, that this was really important work. The work that's been done by Mariana and other child psychologists, but primarily Mariana, in evolving this issue is so compelling, and it's not something perhaps that's been front and center for a lot of medical professionals, healthcare professionals, and yet it has such a profound impact on the health of children and youth. So we felt that we were actually, as you mentioned, kind of uniquely positioned as an injury prevention committee to really effectively write such a statement where, we certainly want to prevent severe injury and death, and injuries that will have life-altering consequences for children. But we recognize how powerful and important the social, emotional, and physical development is that comes along with risky play. And so the statement is really it's an ability to disseminate the knowledge, endorse the work that has been done, and disseminate this knowledge to medical professionals who may not be reading the same literature or be as familiar with the concept of risky play.
Yeah, and as a source of important health information, they are a conduit, a great communication, mechanism to get to parents, and parents often turn to them. Emily, can you tell us a little bit? You worked a lot on the statement as well. What was important for you to make sure was included in the statement?
Yeah. So one thing that we were really interested about is all the evidence. So researchers like Marina have studied that for over 20 years now. And we were, able to provide the evidence behind risky play and show that there were not an increase in severe and fatal injuries associated with risky play, and also all the evidence, that could be linked to obesity and anxiety. So we see that children engaging in risky play, are more active, physically active. They have a better self-esteem. They're more confident in their skills, better peer relationships. So these are all very important things to consider when after that we're trying to either prevent or treat anxiety, behavioral issues, obesity. And so we thought, well, the evidence is there, and risky play seems to be like a good a holistic option, instead of recommending that your child should be active for 2 hours a day, but you should also make sure that he's not too anxious and this and that. So risky play seemed to encompass all of these little recommendations, and it's quite natural in a sense to let children play. So that was a very interesting thing to us.
Mm-hmm. And I think you've hit on a key piece as we kind of think about some of these things in silos of, play and mental health and physical health and relationships, but that they're all interconnected and interdependent in some cases where, the reason for play really does develop those multiple skills, not only the things that we might think about as physical and even cognitive, but the social skills of playing with others on the playground. And the other piece that's important is around, this is not just those scheduled, formal, sport kind of related play. This is outdoor, informal play that children really have a lead in developing what they do and how they play. One of the things that comes up around just play in general in the injury prevention area is around stranger danger. That really has had a big impact on whether people let their kids go to the playground by themselves. I mean, I remember as a kid, it was like, go out, come home when the street lights come on, which is totally different than the approach to parenting today. And some of that's driven by the fear about stranger danger. Mariana, maybe you can talk a little bit about, the parenting approach also that has sort of contributed to this restrictive nature of letting kids go out and play.
Yeah. When we talk to parents about what some of their fears are, we see a top 3 list. One is cars, fear of their kids getting hit by cars. The second, as you say, is stranger danger. And the third is, what will other people think of my parenting? Will I be blamed? Will social services be called? And those sorts of things. And this, as you say, it's kind of a more recent phenomenon. It's something that we've seen emerge since the late 80s, this kind of intensive parenting approach, expectation that to be a good parent, you should be curating your child's childhood, making sure that they're supervised most of the time, getting enriching experiences, and frankly, for a lot of time, play was seen as just a waste of time. And so we really lost the understanding and the value of this. And then you add those kind of emerging and amplifying fears to that. And for example, with cars, there's good reason. Our cities have changed. They're car-centric. We in injury prevention know how important it is to think about car safety, for sure. But when it comes to stranger danger and abduction fears, the fears are definitely way, way overblown compared to the statistics. In Canada, these things are so rare that we're looking at a rate of about 1 in 14 million, which if you play Lotto 649, you have about the same likelihood of winning the lotto. And yet we don't think about, the restrictions that we put on kids and the effect of those on the kids. We're just so worried about their safety. with respect to the third fear, the fear of what other parents will think of them, this has really been heightened, as this kind of good parenting model has really emphasized that parents should really always know where their kids are and have control over them, and kids seen as kind of incapable and incompetent, and parents need to be able to kind of guide them at all times. This has been exacerbated by cell phones, by social media, etc. And there is, of course, the fear that social services will be called if their children are kind of wandering around on their own. And this has been also exacerbated by some actual cases that have happened and that hit the news and that keep parents fearful that this could happen to them. But again, quite unlikely, and we need to think about balancing between the restrictive behaviors that we're putting on kids and the effect on those kids that are severe, as has been identified in this position statement, versus the efforts we as parents do to manage our own fears, which is essentially what we're doing by restricting kids being able to do these kinds of activities.
Suzanne, there was a lot of media attention when the statement was released, which is fantastic. So can you talk a little bit about what the reactions and responses that you've had, like from your fellow physicians, from the media questions that you received?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was so much media attention, which is great that there was such clearly an interest in this topic. We received really overwhelmingly positive feedback from fellow physicians and colleagues who were really impressed with the statement. I think I heard one of my colleagues say, "I loved every word." I've sent it to my sister. I've sent it to so and so. I've sent it. So I think a lot of people really appreciated the information, appreciated the way the statement was written, and appreciated the sort of permission to break down some of that tension maybe that people feel already, and that maybe we are over-parenting and not allowing these behaviors. And I do think, again, that, coming from the Injury Prevention Committee, it carries a lot of weight, because we're actually discussing and promoting how important play is, and the balance between all the benefits that risky play has with the risks of injury prevention, which we know we need to mitigate. But I think a lot of people that we work with maybe hadn't thought of it in this way. And again, it speaks to different literature that different people read, knowledge bases, frames of reference, and so forth. So I think having a statement like this, it received a lot of positive feedback.
Emily, you did a lot of media as well and had some interactions and questions that came up. I mean, I think what Sue's described is the almost like a tipping point. The time has come. People are ready to hear this information. As you said earlier, the work that's been going on, it has been going on for decades, and sort of an idea that whose time has come with this positive reaction. What were some of the questions or reactions you had?
Yeah, so I think the reactions were really positive because people really saw themselves, or it really did apply to everyone. Like even the media, you could see that they were personally interested in the topic. Like they would ask questions and for their children, or say that they would discuss that with their family later this evening, for example. Or so that was really interesting to hear. And I guess it just highlighted how this is a conversation that needed to happen for our society in general. I guess like for Canadians, and I know for sure here in the province of Quebec, it really, I think, started a conversation that will be ongoing hopefully for many months and years to come. But so it was really positive and interesting to hear everyone.
Yeah, you're a pediatrician. You see a lot of families. What are some of the conversations you've had with them about this issue around their children's play?
Yeah, so overall, parents were really interested, but also I think most of them felt reassured, and were happy to know that what they were already doing, maybe in the shadow, was quite something good for their child. It was a great conversation that we had with many parents, and also daycares, schools. I think we had a bit of questions and interest from these people as well.
So a lot of different sections or areas of society, like your families themselves, schools, daycares, physicians, the media. Having them say, "Oh, I'm taking this back to my own family," is an interesting reaction to a story that I guess can be very personal. Mariana, you've been working in this area for ages. When you first started, the reaction to something like this was very different than what we experienced with this statement coming out. So you must be very pleased with the change that's happened over time.
Yeah, you were there. You remember some of the challenges. Although I do recall some of the relief way back then as well, in terms of our injury prevention colleagues, and some of them feeling like that we had to restore this balance. But yeah, it's absolutely incredible to have an organization like the Canadian Paediatric Society and such respected members of the injury prevention community as Dr. Beaulieu and Dr. Benno come out so strongly in support of this. I really am so excited about the potential for this to move things forward, not just for physicians and pediatricians, but for the rest of us as advocacy tools to be able to make the changes that we need to see in all parts of society, as you mentioned, in schools and childcare, municipal design, insurance, litigation, etc., to make sure that we're designing our communities, our neighborhoods, and leaving kids the right to play in this kind of way every day, wherever they choose.
I think that's so important, that there is the right to play, not only the need to play as well. And you just touched on an important aspect that, Parachute is being involved with this and the work that we do, the advocacy piece. Having a statement like this lends so much credibility, as you said, to the topic, but it also is a tool to be able to say, here is a community, here is an organization like the Canadian Paediatric Society, and all of our organizations that we represent, we are all behind this statement. And so I'm hoping that it will loosen a little bit of the fear around things like litigation and insurance and open it up for kids' play. So thank you so much for being here today. It's been a quick conversation. I know we could probably talk more, but thanks for sharing this with us today. And it's a really important topic and issue that parents, I think, struggle with on a daily basis. And this information and your conversation today has really empowered them. So thank you for coming on Popping the Bubble Wrap.
My pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. Popping the Bubble Wrap is a podcast of Parachute, Canada's national injury prevention charity. We release episodes monthly. Visit us at parachute.ca and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Parachute Canada. Don't keep us a secret, though. Help other parents find this podcast by sharing the link to Popping the Bubble Wrap and taking a second to submit a review. It really does help. Popping the Bubble Wrap is produced by Story Studio Network.